Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 36 deadline decisions where I'll discuss your final questions and dilemmas before the deadline such as benching headaches, captaincy and more. If you enjoyed today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So first things first, let's just round up the press conference updates and discuss some of the key injury news that we received before the deadline. And really, there was nothing majorly important, I wouldn't say, in terms of most of our teams. Let's start with Liverpool. Arne Slot did confirm that Conor Bradley would be starting against Arsenal. Now, I thought he might hint at a Conor Bradley start or give us a bit more clarity on Trent's minutes, but he just came straight out and said that Bradley would start. So the full quote was, if Connor was available, then he would have started against Chelsea, which confirms that Trent would have even started the previous game, but Bradley was still coming back from his injury. He then went on to say later in the press conference, Connor will start on Sunday because he needs more games under his belt to prepare for next season. That also makes it sound like Conor Bradley could very well get a start against Brighton in 37, and you never know about Game Week 38. I would say as of right now, unless Conor Bradley picks up an issue in 36, I would predict he starts against Brighton in 37, and therefore I might start him in the next 2 weeks, as we'll discuss when we look at my team at the end. 38's the only slightly difficult one to predict because you could see Trent starting the game and coming off because it's the final home game. I think that just depends how much Slot thinks Trent might receive a positive reception at Anfield, and I just don't know if that will be the case. And if he doesn't think Trent will receive a positive reception, do you really want to start Trent and then sub him off for a standing ovation that's just not going to occur? So we could see a situation where Bradley starts the next three, but in my opinion, it does sound like he'll start the next two games. And if you own him like me, that's great. I wouldn't be going there and buying Conor Bradley, though. I just don't think the fixtures are there to attack. Lots of people are also asking, yeah, but he might get an early sub. He absolutely could. I think early subs are largely a positive thing. If Conor Bradley gets subbed off in the 61st minute, that might mean he blanks the clean sheet. Obviously, the concern is if he gets subbed pre-60, but largely I would be okay. With some of the other defenders that we've got to choose from, I wouldn't mind starting Conor Bradley in the next couple of weeks. The next bit of news was around Erling Haaland. So, of course, Pep did the classic, we'll see, but he said he's ready, he's fit. And then he was asked to start. We will decide tomorrow. We should get early team news, I'd imagine, because Man City are one of those teams where we have various accounts that do often get early team news, and Man City are one of a few early kickoffs because there is no 12:30 kickoff on Saturday. So I'll be doing my deadline stream starting at 11:30 a.m. on Saturday, and I hope to see you there, which means that, yes, Man City are one of the early kickoffs, and I think we will find out. That makes it very difficult to decide about transferring him in before we find that out. Now, I will discuss later in this video whether I am looking at getting Erling Haaland. It's tempting, especially if you are chasing slightly. Even if it is to sell Mohamed Salah, selling Salah to pivot to Haaland captain against Southampton, there is some temptation. But it sounds like he'll be involved in this game in some regard, and I would imagine that he does get minutes. Vitor Pereira confirmed that Strand Larsen has returned to training, so if you've got Strand Larsen and you wanted to play him, and he's been very, very good over the last 10 to 12 weeks, then you can look to do that. He didn't confirm, though, that he will start, so I guess there is some concern there, but I'd imagine if he is fit enough to play, then he'll probably start this game. Amorim did say what we all expected, which is that the Europa League final is obviously everything for Manchester United, and he did say that he's going to try and save the players because it's really important. He did go on to say later in the press conference that that doesn't mean that he's just going to rotate the entire 11. He did say he still wants to put out a competitive side, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's similar-ish to Brentford. My own opinion is that it will probably be a slightly stronger team to what we saw at Brentford. So I still think we'll see a lot of rotation, maybe 6 or 7 players changed, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple more of the first team players start that game. Most people probably won't be relying on them this week, but if you own Kieran Trippier or Fabian Schär, apparently according to Eddie Howe, as much as you can trust Eddie Howe, he said that they are doing pretty good ahead of Game Week 36. Dango Ouattara has been ruled out for Game Week 36 and is unlikely to play again this season. Even Ilson's minutes were already super secure, but with Dango Ouattara out, the only other real player that can play in that number 9 role for Bournemouth, you would imagine that even Ilson gets 270 minutes across the next 3 games. And obviously, if you have Dango Ouattara, this does now make him a sell, but I think most people have probably sold at this point. Matoma has been managing an ongoing heel problem since Game Week 31, but apparently he will return on Saturday for Brighton. So if you've got Matoma in your team, Honestly, I think there are probably better players to own, so I still don't mind you pivoting to someone like an Alanga or a Kevin Schade. But if you wanted to hold on to him, it sounds like he'll be available. There are rumours circulating, this was not discussed in the press conference by Potter, but there are rumours circulating that Paquetá may be rested for the final few games of the season because he is struggling with the ongoing, obviously, case, and the fact that he's struggling with the mental side of the game, I think was what the journalist said that wrote the article. This is just rumours at the moment, but there are some suggestions that he might be benched or rotated a little bit. The reason I bring that up is that would mean that probably Jarrod Bowen is on penalties. Now, because it's only a rumour, I don't think that would make me more likely to buy Bowen, but if you do have him, that could be a positive for Jarrod Bowen in terms of the chance of him getting attacking returns. The only other final piece of news was then around Youri Tielemans, who apparently is set to miss out for Gameweek 36, and he'll be getting a scan next week. The reason I bring that up is not necessarily because lots of people own Tielemans, but I think Tielemans being out makes Aston Villa a significantly weaker team. I would say by some distance, and bear in mind how good Rodgers has been, Tielemans has been their player of the season this year. So I think that is a massive loss. It could mean that we see Rodgers move into a more central role. So it could be that they play 2 DMs and then Rodgers through the centre with like Bailey off the right, Ramsey off the left or something like that. So it could actually benefit Rodgers in terms of his positioning. But I think overall Villa will be a weaker side as a result. So yeah, not any massive news. I think probably the key pieces of news was actually around Erling Haaland being ready and available to start, and then also Connor Bradley looking like he's going to start the next couple of games as well. Let's now move on to answering some of your questions because there are some key things to think about this week. So probably the key decision for a lot of people this week is which forward to buy. Lots of us are sat there with Isak, Mateta, Marmoush. All three of them do have potential issues, right? Mateta's minutes don't look great and he's not performing at the highest level. Marmoush, with Haaland coming back, could have his minutes reduced, and also his output has been a little bit lower than what we would like. And Isak hasn't been in a great run of form and he has difficult fixtures. I'm not going to sit here and say that you should sell any of those three because I think Mateta against Spurs and Marmoush against Southampton are great fixtures, and Isak is the best forward in the league on penalties, but I can understand the justification for selling any of them. There are also 5 fantastic forwards that I haven't even mentioned there that we would like to own in Wissa, Cunha, Wood, Evanilson and Watkins. So before I discuss which of these I would like to buy the most and why, I want to make it very clear, because people are going to get upset with my ranking, I'm sure. All 5 of these are exceptional buys and exceptionally good options for the final 3 games. I have no issue with owning any of these 3. If you were to tell me that I would own my 3 least favourite from the 5, I would still be very happy to have them. So the very fact they're being discussed here, I think they're great, but I don't want to sit on the fence. So I will try my best to give you my opinion on them. If we compare the fixtures for Wissa, Cunha, Wood, Evanilson and Watkins, I would say they all have really nice fixtures. All of them have good fixtures in there. None of them have. If I look at any of their fixtures, I don't hate any of the fixtures for them. The only 2 fixtures that maybe don't look perfect on paper here is Bournemouth play against City in 37, but remember that will be after the FA Cup final, where City will either be, well, they will be fatigued, or as we expect, they'll probably be celebrating for the FA Cup win if they beat Crystal Palace. But regardless, we expect some rotation there. And with Nottingham Forest, they've got a slightly difficult game in Gameweek 38 against Chelsea at home, because Chelsea are a better defence than people give them credit for, but it's at home, final game of the season, and they might still be fighting for Champions League football. So I think when you look at the fixtures overall, I don't dislike the fixtures for any of them. I would say that Brentford, Forest and Bournemouth, they are the only teams that each have an absolute banker fixture, right? Brentford this week against Ipswich, Bournemouth in 38 against Leicester at home, and Forest this week against Leicester at home. So maybe you would lean there just because each of them have that really, really strong fixture. But then again, you look at someone like Aston Villa, they play Spurs and United in the final 2 games, who will both be rotating in and around, obviously, after the Europa League semi-final game. So, which striker forward do I prefer this week? I've tried to rank them. Just please bear in mind that, as I said, I think all 5 are great. At the moment, I've got Wissa in first, Cunha in second, Wood in third, Evanilson fourth, and Watkins fifth. And I sit here right now and I think, how on earth is Ollie Watkins, with great data, getting lots of big chances, in a Villa side that are fighting for the Champions League, with Spurs and United in the final 2 games in fifth? But I just think all of these are good options. Yoane Wissa does stand out for me. But it's weird, right? Because I love penalty takers and I love set piece takers. And Wissa doesn't have either of those things, but he just scores so many goals. And he's involved in so many big chances. You can see 0.49 non-penalty expected goals per 90 this season in the Premier League. Out of all forwards in the Premier League, he has the third best non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 in the league this season. 2.6 shots in the box per 90 as well. I love the fixtures. Ipswich away is such a great fixture this week. We know how good they are at home against Fulham for 37. It'll be an okay game. And then I don't love Wolves away in 38. But if Brentford are still fighting for 8th place at that point, which we expect, they're going to have very, very good motivation for that final game. Wissa is also really nailed. Like, per start, he's averaging 90 minutes over the last 10 game weeks. Like, Wissa just doesn't really get subbed off. He's a bit like Brian Mbeumo there. So lots of these players have some issues associated with them. I just can't see a single issue with Wissa other than the fact that he's not on penalties. That is the only one, but that's not held him back to this point this season. I just back Brentford to score lots of goals over the next 3 games, and so Wissa has to be there. In a very similar way to Brian Mbeumo, again, he doesn't tend to blank against these weaker teams like Ipswich, Leicester, Southampton, so Gameweek 36 just feels like such a good entry point for him. I don't think, though, Wissa is so clear that you don't look at the other options. Like, lots of people will be bringing in Wissa this week. If you're not happy with your rank and you're chasing, don't go for Wissa, because everyone's bringing in Wissa this week. There are 4 perfectly viable alternatives. Cunha in second is a difficult one because his minutes are the least secure for me out of all of the options here. And when there's only 3 weeks left, I don't know that you want to take a massive risk, because if he misses one of the games, he's lost 33% of the available minutes. Obviously, he could come off the bench, but that's a big loss there. You can't afford for him to miss a game. I just think that I expect him to start the final 3 if you were to ask me right now. I know there are rumours of him joining Manchester United and he's not going to stay, so maybe they'll try in the final game of the season at home to do like Manetzi, Bellegarde and Strand Larsen. That trio has worked so well for them. So I can't sit here and confirm that he doesn't miss a game, but he's just so good and he's so important to them and they want to finish as high as they possibly can. Extra revenue for next season. I think he just plays his best players and Cunha is absolutely the best player for them. I also like that they have 2 home games as well. Some of these teams, in fact, quite a few of them have 2 away games. So we've got Aston Villa and Brentford both have 2 away, and then Bournemouth and Forest have 2 home games. So I like having 2 out of the 3 at home. The only thing I would say with Wolves is, again, they don't have a banker fixture there. They're the only team that don't have a green fixture on paper, Brighton, Palace, Brentford. But what does Cunha have? Cunha has a very good goal threat, the highest creativity out of all of the players on this list. He takes penalties, he takes set pieces, and his baseline bonus is so ridiculous that he can get bonus points without an attacking return. So with Cunha, if he gets 3 returns in the next 3 and scores in each of the games, you're looking at a minimum 999, and he could even get some assists to go with that. Cunha, for me, has comfortably the highest ceiling out of everyone here, and he's shown that this season. So if you are looking for a high ceiling and a player that can absolutely pop off in any given game, Cunha's the guy. If you promised me that Cunha played 90 minutes in the next 3 games, I would put Cunha first, and I would buy Cunha this week. I'd buy him ahead of Wissa. The only reason that he's in second, and you could even arguably drop him lower, is you just don't know for sure that he plays all of the next 3. So that is a risk that could be worth taking for the upside. Chris Wood, up until about 5 minutes before I recorded this, I had him in 5th. I had Chris Wood bottom of the list. Because if you look at his data, and I know Chris Wood's a great finisher, best conversion in the Premier League, 0.18 non-pen XG per 90 is so bad. I think he's got 1 goal in his last 8 starts. He's not accumulated over 0.26 XG since game week 25. So Chris Wood just isn't barely having any shots. And even when he does get a shot, it's a low XG chance. And his conversion rate and finishing, we know how good they are, but you need more. I wonder if he's still suffering a little bit from the injury that he picked up. He's just not quite looked the same since returning. That being said, I like the fixtures. Forest do have everything to play for. He is on penalties, and if he does get a half chance, we know he can take it. And in a similar way to Cunha, he is very good for baseline bonus. The reason that I've bumped him up is it's just difficult to overlook the Leicester at home game this week. Like, Leicester at home is such a good fixture. I would not be surprised to see Chris Wood go massive. So it's difficult because I still, if I go through everything that I want from a player, he has a lot of it, right? He has the minutes, he has the penalties, he has the great finishing ability. Forest have a lot to play for, but he's just not getting the chances. And Forest themselves, across the last 6 weeks, they are 18th for non-penalty expected goals. So they're 18th, so the 3rd worst team for attacking data. and they're 18th for non-penalty expected goals conceded. So they're the third worst team for defensive data. Forest are just not in a good moment right now, but it's Leicester at home. So I think for that reason, I've bumped him up to third. Evan-Ilson himself does play Leicester at home, though. If you were to flip Evan-Ilson's fixtures, I'd probably have that sort of like primacy bias where I would want to pick him because the Leicester game is right now, but he does play Leicester. Aston Villa at home isn't a terrible game, and Man City again will be after the FA Cup final. So Evan-Ilson arguably deserves to be higher. Look at his data. 0.68 non-pen XG per 90, 2.87 shots in the box per 90 as well, and he's so cheap. If we're taking into account value here, which for most people it isn't an issue, Evan-Ilson pound for pound is probably the best option on this list. The only thing that I don't love about Evan-Ilson is in a similar way to Wissa, he's not on penalties and he's not on set pieces, unless Kluivert's not on the pitch. And if Kluivert's not on the pitch, then of course he could take a penalty. If Evan-Ilson was on penalties, I'd probably have to bump him up into second or third. Which then leaves Ollie Watkins. And like I say, on paper, Ollie Watkins shouldn't be this low. United and Spurs as the final two games are fantastic. He's been getting a lot of big chances recently, with Rashford likely out for the rest of the season, although there's a chance he could feature in 37. Watkins' minutes should be fairly secure, but we saw him get subbed off in the 71st minute for Marlon in Gameweek 35, and we also know that Tielemans is out for 36. Bournemouth away isn't a great entry point and a great fixture this week, and he's not confirmed on penalties. Asensio is probably ahead of him in the pecking order. We also know that John McGinn is in and around him in terms of that sort of group of players that are third choice penalty takers for Aston Villa. And he does love to miss a big chance, Ollie Watkins. He's not a particularly great finisher. So I like Ollie Watkins as an asset. I'm very tempted to even buy him in 37 for Spurs and United. But if you're saying this week and encompassing the next 3 game weeks altogether, he's just naturally dropped to the bottom of the 5. But once again, in case you missed it at the start, all 5 of these are fantastic. So there's 10 minutes on the best forward to buy, because I think it's the most important decision for a lot of people this week. I don't think you can go wrong with any of them. If you sent me a message saying, Ross, I want your advice, I'm going to buy Watkins, Evan-Ilson, Wood, Cunha or Wissa, love it. Have no issue at all. I have narrowed it down to Wissa and Cunha for my team. I just like the combination of what they offer. I think they both have high upside. They both can score multiple goals in a game. I like the underlying data. I like the fixtures. But the other 3 are also fantastic as well. Let me know who you're buying this week. As well as which forward to buy, lots of us have benching decisions this week. But I would argue that it's not because everyone is fantastic, but also just because a lot of the players don't have great fixtures or there's slight minutes risk. So rather than the benching headache being, I've got so many great players to choose from, I feel like this week I don't actually like a lot of my players. So first thing, I wouldn't bench Salah. Lots of people asking me. His record against Arsenal is fantastic. And I'm finding this game difficult to predict how it will go. I think both Liverpool and Arsenal will go fairly full strength. I don't know if it's going to be a 0-0 or like a 6-6. And I just don't think I would want to take that risk, especially given Salah's on pens. Because he's on pens and because he has creativity as well as goal threat, there's just so many routes to points that in a given game he can go quite big, and it's at Anfield. So I wouldn't bench Salah. You can see the likes of Cunha, Bowen, even Isak at home on penalties. I don't think I'd want to bench him. Lots of people are asking like Eze and Sarr versus Rodgers. For me, that's not close. Spurs are pretty rubbish. They will probably rotate quite heavily ahead of the Europa League, right? They're not going to be going full strength in the Premier League, so they just don't have much to play for. And I know Crystal Palace have the FA Cup final coming up, but I just don't expect them to rotate too heavily, given that they've got like 6 days in between the GW36 game and the Europa League final. They might pull Eze and Sarr off around 70-75, but hopefully at that point they've done the damage. So I think I would just have to have the likes of Eze, Sarr, Mateta ahead of someone like a Morgan Rodgers this week, and also a Barnes and Murphy. They would be lower down. I would really just do my best to target the fixture. I've weirdly got Evan-Ilson ahead of Kluivert. A couple of people have both Evan-Ilson and Kluivert, and given that Kluivert is on penalties and set pieces, I find it very strange that I've got Evan-Ilson. I just don't think Kluivert's been performing at the highest level recently, and Evan-Ilson's underlying data has been exceptionally strong, and his minutes have been better as well. So I think if I was to choose from one of the two, I would go for Evan-Ilson. Saka, by the way, quite high up. I very much expect Saka to start this game. I think Arsenal will go full strength because they're out of the Champions League. They're not in any remaining cups this season. They might as well go full strength to try and beat Liverpool. So I would start Saka. It will probably be Saka versus Tsimikas, and that is a battle that I could see Saka coming out on top of. In terms of the defenders, Munoz would be towards the top. And by the way, I've not got anyone from Man City, Nottingham Forest or Brentford on this list, because I assume that you start all of your Man City, Nottingham Forest and Brentford players, given they play Southampton, Leicester and Ipswich. So if you've got Milenkovic, Gvardiol, Elanga, Marmoush, De Bruyne, I would be starting all of them. But out of the other defenders that you've got to choose from, I've got Munoz at the top, just because I don't think Spurs are playing particularly well. I think it's a matchup which will suit him. Spurs get caught on the counter a lot, and Munoz is very effective there. So I would have Munoz after Gvardiol, the Forest defenders. He would be my next best defender. Kirkes after that, I think it's an okay fixture for him this week. I don't expect him to do fantastically well, but it's at home and he's probably better than the likes of Konsa and Saliba. I do have Bradley ahead of both Konsa and Saliba, and I'll discuss that with my own team at the end. It's a home fixture that we know he's going to start and he's got some attacking threat. I don't expect Konsa or Saliba to keep a clean sheet, and they're both playing away. So for me, Bradley goes ahead. The only reason Konsa goes ahead slightly is just I think Liverpool are a better attack than Bournemouth. Now, I also think that Arsenal are a better defence than Villa, but I would just slightly back Aston Villa to keep a clean sheet slightly more than Arsenal. If you look at the clean sheet odds, both Aston Villa and Arsenal have a 19% chance. So bookies' odds suggest that both Aston Villa and Arsenal are equal and that neither are that likely to keep a clean sheet. The only other thing then is with the goalkeepers, Martinez, Raya, Areola. Those are the three that I'm getting lots of questions about. I would have Martinez ahead of Raya for the reasons that I just said. But also, Martinez makes a lot more saves than Raya on average. And also, he is a better penalty saver. I know Raya recently did save a pen, but Martinez is on average a better penalty stopper than Raya. So I'd have Martinez ahead of Raya. But I think I would have Raya ahead of Areola. I don't think Arsenal or West Ham keep a clean sheet this week. But I think I back Arsenal slightly more than West Ham. Like, United aren't particularly good, but I just don't see West Ham keeping them out at Old Trafford. So yeah, Martinez, Raya, Areola in that order. Hopefully that helps. Feel free to pause it and look for your players here. Again, if your player plays for Man City, Nottingham Forest, or Brentford, they're not on this list because they've got the best fixtures in the league, and I would probably just start them. So a lot of us talking about forwards this week and even to some extent defenders, but there's not been much chat around the midfielders because lots of us are just happy with our midfield. So a couple of questions came in. For those of us looking to make a midfielder transfer, are there any midfielders that you like the look of for the final few weeks? And who would you buy to replace Murphy this week? I will just note that I think for a lot of people, if you've got Sarr, Rodgers, other players like that, I actually don't think that the midfielders that you can go out there and buy are that much better than the players that you're selling. So I think for most people, I would probably just keep your midfielders at least for this week. The second point is, I'm going to go through some cheaper options now, but if you can afford Cole Palmer, De Bruyne or Saka, they're obviously fantastic players to buy in their own right. I think De Bruyne this week seems great. From next week, I really like both Saka and Palmer. And then even a level below that, if you can afford Bryan Mbeumo or Jared Bowen, Bryan Mbeumo and Jared Bowen should absolutely be top of your list as well. So this is assuming that you can't stretch beyond like 6.5 million. Who would I go for? If we like Bowen, Kudus' minutes have been very good. And if you watch the games, he is always in and around the box and in and around the action. His underlying data has been pretty poor. The output hasn't been particularly high. But just given that the fixtures aren't bad at all, Man United this week, Ipswich in 38, I think you could definitely do worse than Mohamed Kudus. I would put Paquetá on there because of the penalties, but there is obviously the slight concern that his minutes might be a little bit reduced over the final three. So Mohamed Kudus is an absolutely fine option. This is under the assumption that you really need to chase, though, or you can't afford Jared Bowen. My favourite midfielder to buy this week would be Anthony Elanga. His minutes were a little bit reduced, like 5 or 6 game weeks ago, but he started, I think, and got 90 in the last 2. And with the way that Chris Wood's playing, Chris Wood just doesn't seem fully at it. And I think because Chris Wood's not fully at it, Elanga's having to do a lot more and he's drifting a lot more centrally. Obviously, without Hudson-Odoi on the left, they're basically playing with a front two of Elanga and Chris Wood. I just think that the fixtures, motivation, underlying data is pretty good. I just like Anthony Elanga as a pick a lot. Gibbs White is also another really decent pick, but his underlying data is a lot weaker. His minutes are probably more secure, though. But I just think Anthony Elanga, for his price, can offer you a lot. So yeah, Anthony Elanga would be my favourite to buy. Leicester at home this week just feels absolutely perfect. Kevin Schade. Do I expect him to score 15 points every week? No, but he's getting very good minutes every week. He's very close to goal. And in all honesty, I'm surprised he hasn't had more goals. Like when you watch Brentford, again, he is very much more of an eye test pick than a data pick, but he's always in and around where you want him to be. He's just not really latched on to any chances until Man United last week. The fixtures are there to attack. Ipswich this week could be really good for him. So I like Kevin Schade. And then I don't overlook Justin Kluivert. The issue with Bournemouth is their best game is 38. So a lot of us will look at it this week and say, oh, their best game's in a few weeks. I'll wait, which is absolutely fine. Maybe you wait until 38 to buy a Bournemouth player, which is what I might be looking at with Eva Nilsson. But he could also do very well against Aston Villa and Man City. And again, corners, free kicks, and penalties, multiple routes to points. So if you think Bournemouth will do well over the next few, Kluivert will very well be at the heart of that. Other players that you could consider, Damsgaard, I quite like from Brentford as well. If you don't want to go for Sharda, he's just got more assist threat than goal threat. Other Bournemouth players, you could go for a Semenyo. He's just had his rest. You would expect him to start most of the remaining games. I actually don't mind Enzo Fernandez. I think has been performing at an extremely high level, but most people probably won't want to go there. I don't think there are many players outside of that would be that desperate to go and buy. Really, Jared Bowen and Brian Mbeumo are the main two that I would. But assuming you can't afford them, I would probably be looking at Anthony Elanga or Kevin Sharda. Let me know if you're making a midfield transfer this week and who you're bringing in. So we obviously now know that Erling Haaland is ready to be involved in Game Week 36, and we know that Man City are one of the early kickoffs on Saturday because it's a Saturday 1:30 p.m. deadline for the 3 p.m. games are essentially the early kickoffs. So we might get a team leak that Haaland starts. So let's discuss what we will do if we get a leak 5-10 minutes before the deadline that Haaland starts. Is it crazy to sell Salah to Haaland for a -4? I wouldn't say crazy, no. What I think this comes down to is not necessarily your expectations from Haaland or whether you think Salah's a good option. I think this comes down to how much are you chasing. And we say this a lot for the final few game weeks, so apologies for the repetition, but this is purely I need to gain a lot of ground, therefore I'm doing it. Because if you are like, let's say your aim is top 50k and you're somewhere between 40 and 60k, it's looking pretty good for you. You don't have to make up many points. You're maybe protecting a few points, but you're in and around where you want to be. Selling Salah at 130% EO for Haaland is a risk that you just probably don't need to take. Like the upside, yeah, let's say Haaland brags a brace and Salah blanks. Yeah, it's great. You got to 20k instead. But if your aim was top 50k and you're well in and around that, it's just probably not a risk you need to take. Like I'm 15k right now. My aim for the season was top 50k and I'm about 13 points off the top 10k. I don't think I want to run the risk of selling Salah because if it goes wrong, I could drop all the way down to like 35, 40k and then I'm right on the cusp of where I wanted to be. Whereas right now I'm pretty safe in and around what I thought would be a good rank to finish the season. And it's the same with your mini leagues. If you're 10 points clear in your mini league, I don't think I'd be sat there right now thinking I'm going to sell Salah for Haaland. But if I was 40 points behind, this is absolutely a move that I would be tempted to do. Salah's not performing at a very high level. The fixtures aren't perfect for him in the final three. Arsenal this week, whilst he performs well traditionally, isn't the perfect fixture for him. But we just know what Salah can do. And my concern with Haaland is, do you know that Haaland gets more than 45 minutes even if he starts, or 50 or 60? How likely is Haaland to just go straight back into the team and play 90 minutes? So even if he starts, can you confirm how many minutes he gets? What if he starts this game, starts the FA Cup final? Can you then promise me that Haaland starts against Bournemouth in Game Week 37 a few days later? So it's not just Haaland starting, it's also how many minutes do you think he gets over the next 3 games as well. The only way I would make this move, in my opinion, is if you genuinely do not believe in Salah as an asset for the final 3. Like, you really don't like him as an asset, which I think would be crazy personally, and or you are really chasing. And I think we are talking 30 plus points away from your target rank, 30 plus points away from your mini league rival. At that point, this is the sort of move you need to consider. If you're asking me if I'm tempted, there is 10 to 15% of me that's tempted. I've looked at it, I can do something like Salah and Mateta to Elanga and Haaland, right? Salah and Mateta to Elanga and Haaland. I'd probably prefer Elanga and Haaland if Haaland starts. It's just not worth the risk for me. I don't want to throw away my season on such a big risk that I'm not even truly believing in. Because like I said, I can't confirm Haaland's minutes. So we'll see what happens on the deadline stream. What I would probably advise you do is have a plan in place for any news that we might get. So what is your plan if De Bruyne starts and Marmoush is benched? What is your plan if Haaland starts and De Bruyne is benched? Like, go through all of the permutations of the news we could get for Man City and think, what will my plan be if we get that? Because we won't get the deadline. We won't get the news until like 5-10 minutes before the deadline. Maybe even 2 minutes. You will not have the time then at that point to think about what you do. So go through your plans, work out what you're going to do. I'm 10% tempted, but probably won't do it. Let me know if we get a leak, will you buy Haaland or not? There genuinely are so many good captaincy options this week. So in a similar way to what I said with the best forwards to buy, where I said all of them are good, everyone on this screen right now is a perfectly viable captaincy option. So don't get offended by the Raptor ranking. Don't get offended if the player that you're captaining I've put down in like 6th or 7th. They are all really good options. This just comes down to personal preference, opinion, and predictions about how the games will go as well. My favourite captaincy option this week is Bryan Mbeumo. The reason for that is I just think it's the perfect game for him. Ipswich are so poor down their left flank, which is where Bryan Mbeumo operates. We've seen that in a lot of the recent games. We also know that he is averaging 12.8 points per game against the promoted teams this season. He's only blanked once in the other 4 games against the promoted teams, including Ipswich. He's had 14 plus points. A 19-pointer against Southampton. This is a man that when Brentford score lots of goals against a weaker team, he is absolutely involved in it. And again, he doesn't take all set pieces, he shares them with Damsgaard, but he's got some set pieces and penalties. If you want me to sit on the fence or give you the alternative perspective of why I don't like Bryan Mbeumo as a captaincy shout, he's got the worst goal threat on this list over the last 10 games. 0.16 non-pen XG is actually really poor. Like very, very, very poor. He doesn't have much open play goal threat, but he's a great finisher. I think he has the second best conversion rate in the Premier League this season. At least he did a few weeks ago. He can score from outside the box and he's on penalties. So he could just get a penalty, score one from outside the box, and he's got a brace. So I also like that he's got very good creativity. He's just got so many routes to points, and because he's always on the pitch, like Bryan Mbeumo never gets subbed. And if he does, it's like the 88th minute. He just always has a chance. The amount of times, and I know this because it's often I don't own him, that he scores in like the 90th minute is so frustrating when you don't own him captain. He's just that guy. So yeah, the data doesn't necessarily support this. The data would say there are much better players to pick from, but I like Bryan Mbeumo. In second, I've got Kevin De Bruyne. This is under the assumption that you are confident that he starts or we get a leak, because there is still a small chance that he doesn't start the Southampton game. He started 5 in a row in the Premier League. Let's say that you think he starts the FA Cup final and you think he starts the final home game of the season and you think he starts in 38. If there is a game to not play De Bruyne, it is Southampton away. I just think he'll play again, though. I really do. I think he'll start. I think he'll get pretty good minutes. I do think there's a chance that he gets subbed early. So that is the only concern, is like, how confident are you that he gets more than 65 minutes? Like, maybe Haaland doesn't start. Maybe Marmoush and De Bruyne do. I wouldn't be surprised if it's De Bruyne that comes off for Haaland rather than Marmoush, and that could be around, again, the 65th minute. So he's in second. Again, the data doesn't support this. Like, my favourite 2 picks on this list in Mbeumo and De Bruyne, they don't have the strongest data, but it's a bit more than that. Like, they've got multiple routes to points. They're great. They're passing the eye test. They're in great form, and they've got the fixtures to target. In third place, just ahead of Chris Wood, I've got Yohan Wissa. I think Wissa and Wood are my 2 favourite differential captaincy options, because I think Mbeumo and Bowen will be the 2 most popular captaincy options amongst elite managers. Lots of people will go for Salah. Not that many people, I don't think, will captain Wood and Wissa. So I think if you're chasing a little bit and you want to go a little bit different, I would go for one of them. I've already spoken about in the forwards to buy section, so if you want to go and get my opinion on the 2 of them, go watch that. I think Wissa is a marginally better asset than Wood. All I will say on captaincy, I think captaining Wood makes a little bit more sense in terms of he has the pens and he's better for bonus points. And also, Forest tend to score fewer goals, so Wood is often even better for bonus when they do score. If you look at bookies' odds, he's actually got the second highest percentage chance for goal, Chris Wood. So I wouldn't mind if in the rankings you pushed Wood ahead of Wissa, but I would have them I would have like Mbeumo and De Bruyne as the first batch of like captaincy options, and then there's the second batch I would have like Wood and Wissa in third and fourth. In fifth, I've got Marmoush. I like Marmoush. I really do. I just don't think he's quite been at it in recent weeks. Like, bookies' odds have him as the greatest chance of scoring a goal this game week, only after Erling Haaland, by the way. I've not put Haaland here because we just don't know if he'll start. But if he does, also a good option. But yeah, if Marmoush starts, he's got really good underlying data, great chance of scoring a goal, playing against the weakest team in the league. Southampton are the weakest team in the league still. The only thing I don't like is I didn't like when he was pushed out to the right. I don't like this position he's playing. He's playing like a bit part player, I said last week, which basically means he's just part of a system. He doesn't feel like the guy that's like Wood for Forest is that guy for them. And Mbeumo for Brentford is that guy for them. I just don't get that feeling with Marmoush. And also, he has been spurning a lot of the chances he's been getting too. So I don't mind him. I'm going to definitely keep him if he starts. But slight doubt around if he gets 90 minutes. Not been overly impressed with his output recently. It just puts him in fifth. Salah in 6th maybe feels a little bit low. It's just the fixture, right? Arsenal are in much better defence than anyone else that these players are playing against this week. His data has dropped off a little bit, but still okay goal threat, really good creativity. I just think he's an okay option. Like, if you just want to default to Salah, I don't hate it. But it was the same as last week when they were playing against Chelsea. I said the same thing. Chelsea are a decent defence. I think there are better options. If you want to default to Salah, go for it. He blanks. He might return in this game. It doesn't excite me that much. And then in 7th and 8th, I've got Cunha and Bowen. I think they're also really good options. Like, I've got Jarrod Bowen in my team. I could conceivably captain him. His data's actually been like better than Brian Mbeumo, as you can see here. A little bit more impressive. He's got over double the goal threat of Brian Mbeumo across the last 10. He could potentially be on penalties, take some set pieces. I just think the Manchester United are a little bit of a stronger defence than the likes of Southampton, Ipswich and Leicester. Not necessarily much stronger, but just strong enough for me to just fancy one of the other fixtures. And it's kind of the same with Matheus Cunha. Yes, Brighton aren't the strongest defence. We've seen that in recent weeks. But also, that was one of the justifications for captaining Isak last week. And if not for the penalty, he got barely any chances. Brighton looked a little bit stronger defensively. So I just think there are better fixtures to target than the likes of Arsenal, Manchester United and Brighton. So for me, believe it or not, massive surprise, I would captain a player that's playing against Southampton, Ipswich or Leicester this week. So for me, it would be a City player, a Brentford player or Chris Wood. As of right now, I do still think that Brian Mbeumo, just everything put together, is going to be the guy for me. If I own Kevin De Bruyne, he would have my vice and I would be very tempted. I would want to get a leak that De Bruyne starts though. And again, I would not be hugely surprised if De Bruyne gets subbed somewhere between the 60th and 70th minute. And for that reason, knowing that Mbeumo is going to get 85 plus, most likely 90 plus, it just makes him the go-to guy for me. So let me know what you think on captaincy this week. Again, any of the options on this list are conceivably good enough. Also, even someone like an Eberechi Eze, the way that he's playing right now against a very, very leggy and leaky Spurs team would also be a good shout. There are other options that I even list. Gvardiol. Don't hate it. If he's playing left back, clean sheet potential very high, attacking threat very good. There are so many options that you could choose from this week. But yeah, top 3 if you were to push me now, Mbeumo, De Bruyne, and I'll sit on the fence and say Wood and Wissa together as joint third. Let me know who you're captaining. So guys, just to finish up with my own team and my latest thoughts on it, a lot of my decisions this week come around benching decisions with the defenders before we talk about my transfers. So I need to start one of Raya or Areola. I've just gone back to Raya, as I said earlier this video, just because I don't think either keep a clean sheet, but if I'm going to back a defence, it should probably be the Arsenal defence that I back rather than the West Ham defence. So yeah, that's the reason that Raya is in. And I've got Bradley in the starting 11. I know I've then got Raya and Bradley, but I wouldn't be surprised, again, if this was a 0-0 or a 1-0 to one team. It could just sort of peter out in that way, because I don't think either team are hugely motivated to win this game above and beyond some of the other teams around them. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a low-scoring game. I also wouldn't be surprised if each team scored 3 or 4. But Bradley's just got a decent amount of attacking threat. You can see when he does play, like 0.31 there, XGI. When he gets minutes, he can do pretty well, like 0.2 XGI here. I'm not saying Bradley's like the new Trent, right? We know that he's not even close to being as attacking as him. But when I watch when he's playing, he's always picking up good positions in and around the box. And if we talk about individual motivation, he's got a point to prove, right? That he's the starting right back of the future for Liverpool. Playing at home, I really don't mind it. My other options are Contra and Saliba. I just don't think either of them keep a clean sheet or get an attacking return either. I don't think I'll start Rodgers. So I think that's pretty much it. That's the first decision. Raya or Areola. And then start one of Bradley, Contra or Saliba. At the moment, it's Raya and Bradley. In terms of my transfer then, or transfers I suppose could be, I do think Mateta to Wissa or Cunha makes a lot of sense. And I just think because of the slight doubts, just the slight doubts around Cunha's minutes, as boring as it is because everyone seems to be doing it, Mateta to Wissa does make sense for me. If I make that move, that will be it, right? Because I can't then find a way to shoehorn Kevin De Bruyne in. There aren't any other moves that I desperately want to make. So if I do Mateta to Wissa, it will probably be just that I leave it there. The other option that I've got right now is rather than selling Mateta, because he's got Spurs this week, is actually sell a player with a more difficult fixture, which is Isak. So in this case, it would be Isak to Wissa. And if I do Isak to Wissa, I could just leave it there. So exactly the same, Isak to Wissa, not take a hit, have 5.1 in the bank. And what that 5.1 will do is it'll allow me next week to sell Sarr to Palmer or Saka. Because in that spot, I'd be able to afford 10.8. The other option I have is to make the move this week to sell Sarr for a -4 and bring in Kevin De Bruyne. Now, why do I like this? Kevin is top 2 players to own this week. Like I said, he's a genuine captaincy shout. And he's the only player that can really, really batter my rank this week. So he's a player that I would quite like to own and stop from absolutely destroying my team. But it means I have to sell Isak, who's also highly owned and is also fantastic and on penalties. It is a -4 hit as well. And in 37 and 38, I'm just not as desperate to own Kevin De Bruyne. It's just for 1 week. So I feel like I'm letting FOMO direct me there. I just don't think it's the best move. I actually do think if I am to make the move, probably Salah to Palmer next week for Man United at home and captain him. Like, that's a real captaincy shout. That's before the Europa League final. So we know for a fact that they're going to rotate quite heavily Manchester United ahead of that. And Palmer, if Palmer looks good against Newcastle once again, he's a genuine option to bring in. But then if I'm not making the move this week, maybe I should just keep Isak, who's the better player, and sell Mateta. The other option I have is I don't need to make a transfer, right? This team is perfectly okay to just roll with. But it just doesn't feel like I'm going to have to sell Mateta anyway. Mateta needs to be sold at some point across the next 3 weeks. Why not do it in a week where there are loads of other good options, such as Wissa against Ipswich? Like, even if Mateta gets 80 minutes against Spurs, it's great. I'd like to have Mateta for 80 minutes against Spurs, but I would still rather 90 minutes of Wissa against Ipswich if you were to give me one or the other. So considering it's for free, I don't hate that. That would then give me 3.1 million in the bank. It would not give me the money then next week to bring in Palmer or Saka. So that's something that I'd have to think about. But it would offer me the opportunity to do something like Isak to Watkins if I want to. So all of that to say, I'm really not sure exactly what I want to do yet. It depends how much I feel like I want Kevin De Bruyne, but I feel like I'm being driven by FOMO there. So I think what is more likely is I just do Mateta to Wissa, keep it nice and simple, keep it boring, hope that my team does well enough to still move me closer towards the top 10k, and then in 37 and 38, I can start to take a little bit more risks based on how much I need to chase. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you do if this is your team. If I make that move, I'm really happy. Like, especially the midfield. I think midfield, I know I've not got Kevin De Bruyne, but Salah and Burmo, Sarr and Bowen feels like a really nice midfield. I think it's an okay team. I don't expect a massive green arrow this week, but you can't get a green every week. Let me know what you think of my team, and let me know what your plans are as well. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 36 deadline decisions video. Hopefully that has been helpful, and if it has, please do smash that like button. Let's aim for 2,000 likes on this video, and if you are new around here, please do consider subscribing as well. But until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.